Sarah Martinez had always been different from her classmates. While other kids spent their weekends playing video games or hanging out at the mall, she found herself drawn to the local fire station. Her father, Captain Martinez, had been a firefighter for 22 years, and Sarah had grown up listening to his stories about saving lives and protecting the community. The fire station was like a second home to her. She knew every corner of Engine Company 19, from the gleaming red trucks to the worn leather chairs in the common room where firefighters shared meals and swapped stories. The smell of diesel fuel and cleaning supplies had become as familiar to her as her own bedroom. She would spend hours polishing the trucks, organizing equipment, and learning about the different tools that could mean the difference between life and death in an emergency. When Sarah turned 16, she made a decision that would change her life forever. During a particularly emotional conversation with her father about a family they had lost in a house fire the previous week, Sarah felt something shift inside her. She watched the pain in her father's eyes as he described holding a young mother's hand while paramedics worked desperately to save her. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about all the people who needed help, all the families who could be saved if there were more dedicated firefighters willing to risk everything. The next morning, Sarah walked into her father's study and announced her intention to become a firefighter. Captain Martinez looked up from his paperwork, his weathered face breaking into a proud smile. He had hoped for this moment but never wanted to pressure his daughter into following his path. Sarah's mother was less enthusiastic. She had spent 2 decades worrying about her husband's safety, and the thought of her only daughter running into burning buildings filled her with dread. Despite her mother's concerns, Sarah threw herself into preparation. She started working out twice a day, building the physical strength and endurance she would need. She volunteered at the fire station every weekend, learning everything she could about fire science, emergency medical procedures, and rescue techniques. The other firefighters became her mentors, teaching her how to handle heavy equipment, read smoke patterns, and stay calm under pressure. By her senior year of high school, Sarah had transformed from a quiet, bookish teenager into a confident young woman with clear goals and unwavering determination. She had already been accepted to the State Fire Academy, where she would spend 6 months learning the technical skills and safety protocols that would keep her and her future colleagues alive in dangerous situations. However, there was one aspect of Sarah's life that she kept hidden from most people at the fire station. During her junior year of high school, following a particularly difficult period when her grandmother passed away from cancer, Sarah had gotten a tattoo. It wasn't a typical teenage rebellion tattoo. Instead, she had chosen something deeply meaningful, a detailed image of a phoenix rising from flames, covering most of her left shoulder and extending down her upper arm. The tattoo represented her grandmother's battle with cancer and her belief in rebirth and renewal. Her grandmother had been the strongest person Sarah knew. Even as the disease ravaged her body, had maintained her spirit and encouraged Sarah to pursue her dreams fearlessly. The phoenix symbolized courage and Sarah's commitment to helping others rise from their own ashes, whether literal or metaphorical. Sarah had gotten the tattoo at a reputable shop, researching the artist carefully and saving money from her part-time job at a local restaurant. The process had taken several sessions, and the final result was a stunning piece of art that told her family's story. The phoenix's wings were rendered in brilliant oranges and reds, with intricate feather details that seemed to move in the right light. At the base of the design, small flames contained tiny images that represented important moments in her grandmother's life. A small cross for her faith, a wedding ring for her 50-year marriage, and a tiny heart for the family she had raised. The tattoo shop owner had been impressed by Sarah's maturity and the thoughtfulness behind her design choice. Unlike many teenagers who came in asking for impulsive designs, Sarah had spent months planning every detail. She understood that this would be permanent, and she wanted it to mean something significant for the rest of her life. Sarah kept the tattoo covered at the fire station, wearing long-sleeved shirts even during hot summer days. She wasn't ashamed of it, but she was aware that the fire department, like many traditional organizations, might have strict policies about visible tattoos. She had heard stories about other departments where firefighters were required to cover any tattoos while on duty, and she didn't want to create any complications before she had even started her career. As graduation day approached, Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness about beginning her training at the Fire Academy. She had worked harder than anyone else in her class, maintaining perfect grades while also excelling in physical fitness. Her application to the academy had been flawless, with glowing recommendations from current firefighters who had watched her volunteer work and dedication over the years. The night before she left for the academy, Sarah's family threw a small celebration dinner. Captain Martinez raised a toast to his daughter, his eyes bright with pride as he spoke about her determination and character. Sarah's mother, who had gradually accepted her daughter's career choice, presented her with a small gold necklace that had belonged to her grandmother. The pendant was a small phoenix, matching Sarah's tattoo in a way that made her heart swell with emotion. As Sarah packed her bags for the academy, carefully folding the long-sleeved shirts and jackets she planned to wear during training, she felt ready to begin this new chapter of her life. She had no idea that her carefully hidden tattoo would soon become the center of a controversy that would test everything she believed about fairness, tradition, and standing up for what was right. The State Fire Academy stood like a fortress against the morning sky, its brick buildings and training towers creating an intimidating silhouette that made Sarah's stomach flutter with nervous energy. She arrived on a crisp Monday morning in September, carrying 2 duffel bags and wearing her lucky long-sleeved academy shirt that completely covered her phoenix tattoo. The first day began with orientation in a large auditorium filled with 60 other recruits from across the state. Sarah looked around at her future classmates and felt a familiar surge of determination. She was one of only 8 women in the program, but she had expected that. What surprised her was how young many of the other recruits looked, despite most of them being in their early 20s like herself. Chief Instructor Williams, an imposing man with 30 years of firefighting experience, stood at the front of the room and outlined the rigorous 6-month program ahead of them. His voice boomed through the auditorium as he explained the physical demands, academic requirements, and strict discipline that would govern their lives for the next half year. Sarah hung on every word, taking careful notes and already planning how she would excel in each area. The first few weeks at the academy were exactly what Sarah had expected: grueling physical training, intensive classroom sessions on fire science and emergency medical procedures, and practical exercises that tested their ability to work as a team under pressure. Sarah thrived in this environment, often finishing at the top of her class in both academic and physical challenges. Her fellow recruits began to respect her dedication and skill. Tommy, a former Marine from Elle, became her training partner during ladder drills. Lisa, one of the other female recruits, sought out Sarah's help with some of the more challenging technical material. Even the instructors began to notice Sarah's exceptional performance, often using her as an example of proper technique during demonstrations. The academy's dress code was strict but manageable for Sarah. During physical training, everyone wore standard academy t-shirts and shorts, but Sarah always arrived early to change into long sleeves for any exercises that might require her to remove her jacket. During classroom sessions, she wore her uniform shirts with the sleeves rolled down, even when the building's aging heating system made the rooms uncomfortably warm. 3 weeks into the program, during a particularly hot afternoon training session, Sarah's careful routine was disrupted. The recruits were practicing search and rescue techniques in a simulated smoke-filled building, wearing full gear including heavy jackets and breathing apparatus. The exercise was designed to simulate the extreme heat and disorientation firefighters experience during actual emergency calls. After completing her 3rd run through the training maze, Sarah stumbled out of the building, her face flushed and breathing heavily. The temperature outside was 92 degrees, and the combination of the heavy gear and intense physical exertion had pushed her body to its limits. Without thinking, she pulled off her jacket and training shirt, revealing a tank top underneath, and for the first time at the academy, her phoenix tattoo. The colorful design immediately caught the attention of several nearby recruits. Tommy let out a low whistle of appreciation, while Lisa stared in amazement at the intricate artwork covering Sarah's shoulder and upper arm. The phoenix seemed to come alive in the afternoon sunlight, its vibrant oranges and reds creating a striking contrast against Sarah's skin. "That's incredible artwork," said another recruit who had been struggling with some of the physical challenges. "How long did that take?" Sarah felt a moment of panic as she realized what had happened, but she tried to play it off casually. "A few sessions," she replied, quickly pulling her training shirt back on. "It's a tribute to my grandmother." Most of the recruits gathered around, asking questions about the design and sharing stories about their own tattoos. Sarah discovered that more than half of her classmates had some form of tattoo, though most were smaller and easily concealed under their uniforms. The conversation was friendly and supportive, with several people commenting on the obvious skill of the tattoo artist and the meaningful symbolism of the phoenix design. However, Sarah's moment of relief was short-lived. Instructor Davis, a stern woman in her 40s who served as the Academy's discipline coordinator, had witnessed the entire scene from across the training yard. Davis had a reputation for strict enforcement of Academy rules and had already dismissed 2 recruits for minor infractions during the first month of the program. That evening, as Sarah was reviewing her notes for the next day's examination on hydraulic systems, she received a message to report to Instructor Davis's office first thing in the morning. The message didn't specify the reason for the meeting, but Sarah felt a sinking sensation in her stomach as she tried to fall asleep that night. The next morning, Sarah knocked on the door of Instructor Davis's office exactly at 7 o'clock. The office was decorated, with certificates and commendations covering one wall and a large photograph of Davis's graduation class from 20 years earlier prominently displayed behind her desk. "Recruit Martinez," Davis began without preamble, "it has come to my attention that you have a large, visible tattoo that violates Academy appearance standards. Is this correct?" Sarah felt her mouth go dry, but she managed to respond clearly. "Yes, ma'am. I have a tattoo on my left shoulder and arm." Instructor Davis opened a thick manual and read directly from a highlighted section. Academy Regulation 4.7 states that recruits shall maintain professional appearance standards at all times. Visible tattoos that extend beyond the collar line or sleeve line of standard uniforms are not permitted. Recruits found to be in violation of this regulation may face disciplinary action up to and including dismissal from the program. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She had worked so hard to get to this point, had sacrificed so much to pursue her dream of becoming a firefighter. The thought of being dismissed from the academy over her grandmother's memorial tattoo felt devastating and deeply unfair. "Ma'am," Sarah said carefully, "I've been very careful to keep my tattoo covered throughout the program. Yesterday was the first time it was visible, and that was only because of the extreme heat during the rescue exercise. I can continue to keep it covered during all training activities." Instructor Davis's expression remained stern and unsympathetic. "The regulation doesn't make exceptions for circumstances, Recruit Martinez. The fact remains that you have a tattoo that would be visible in standard firefighter uniforms, and that violates our appearance standards. You have until Friday to report to my office with documentation of tattoo removal procedures, or you will be dismissed from the program." Sarah felt her world tilting off its axis. Tattoo removal was expensive, painful, and time-consuming, often requiring multiple laser treatments over several months or even years. Even if she could afford the procedure, there was no guarantee that such an intricate and colorful design could be completely removed. More importantly, removing her grandmother's memorial felt like betraying memory and everything the phoenix represented to her family. As Sarah left Instructor Davis's office, her mind raced with possible solutions. She thought about her father's advice to always fight for what was right, about her grandmother's courage in the face of impossible odds, and about the other firefighters she had known who had visible tattoos but were still exceptional at their jobs. That afternoon, during a break between classes, Sarah's friends at the academy around her. Tommy shared that his brother, a firefighter in California, had several visible tattoos and had never faced any professional consequences. Lisa pointed out that many modern fire departments across the country had updated their appearance policies to reflect changing social attitudes about body art. As the week progressed, Sarah realized that this situation was about more than just her own career prospects. It was about whether talented, dedicated people should be excluded from public service jobs based on personal expression that had no impact on their ability to save lives and protect communities. She thought about other potential firefighters who might face similar discrimination, and about the message being sent to young people who looked up to firefighters as role models. By Thursday evening, Sarah had made her decision. Instead of scheduling tattoo removal procedures, she would use her meeting with Instructor Davis to challenge the policy itself. Knowing that this choice might end her dream of becoming a firefighter, but hoping it might open doors for others who came after her. Friday morning arrived with an overcast sky that seemed to mirror Sarah's mood as she prepared for what might be her final day at the fire academy. She had spent the previous evening on the phone with her father, who had listened carefully to her situation and supported her decision to challenge the policy. Captain Martinez had shared stories about changes he had witnessed in the fire service over his career, reminding Sarah that progress often required someone to take a stand, even when the personal cost was high. Sarah dressed carefully in her cleanest uniform, making sure every detail of her appearance was perfect, except for the one thing she refused to change. She had spent hours researching tattoo policies at fire departments across the country, gathering documentation that she hoped would support her argument. She discovered that departments in major cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York had all updated their policies in recent years to allow visible tattoos, recognizing that such restrictions often excluded qualified candidates from diverse backgrounds. At exactly 7 o'clock, Sarah knocked on Instructor Davis's door. This time, she carried a folder containing her research, letters of recommendation from firefighters who had worked with her during her volunteer years, and a detailed explanation of her tattoo's significance. She had also written a formal letter requesting a review of the Academy's appearance policy, citing examples of successful policy changes at other departments. "Recruit Martinez," Instructor Davis said as Sarah entered the office. "I assume you have the documentation I requested regarding tattoo removal procedures." Sarah took a deep breath and stood at attention. "Ma'am, I do not have tattoo removal documentation. Instead, I respectfully request a formal review of Academy Regulation 4.7 based on evidence that similar policies at other fire departments have been successfully updated to allow visible tattoos without any negative impact on department effectiveness or public safety." Instructor Davis's eyebrows rose slightly, but her expression remained stern. "Recruit Martinez, you were given clear instructions. Your failure to comply with those instructions demonstrates exactly the kind of insubordination that has no place in the fire service." Sarah remained calm, drawing on the same composure she had developed during emergency training exercises. "Ma'am, with respect, I believe this policy is outdated and discriminatory. I've prepared documentation showing that talented firefighters across the country serve with distinction while having visible tattoos. I've maintained excellent performance in all aspects of the Academy program, and my tattoo has no bearing on my ability to save lives or protect the community." For the next 20 minutes, Sarah presented her research methodically and professionally. She showed examples of fire departments that had changed their policies and actually improved their recruitment of qualified candidates. She explained the personal significance of her Phoenix tattoo and how it represented the same values of courage and renewal that define the fire service. She pointed out that many military veterans, who often made excellent firefighters, had tattoos from their service years. Instructor Davis listened without interrupting, occasionally taking notes but maintaining her stern expression throughout Sarah's presentation. When Sarah finished, the office fell silent except for the sound of rain beginning to patter against the windows. "Recruit Martinez," Davis finally said, "your research is thorough and your presentation is professional. However, you seem to misunderstand the fundamental issue here. This isn't about the quality of your tattoo or its personal meaning. This is about following orders and maintaining standards. If we make exceptions for you, where does it end? What's to stop other recruits from challenging any rule they don't like?" Sarah felt her frustration building but kept her voice steady. "Ma'am, I'm not asking for an exception. I'm asking for a review of a policy that may be preventing qualified people from serving their communities. The fire service has always evolved to meet changing needs. We use different equipment, different techniques, and different recruitment strategies than we did 20 years ago. Why shouldn't our appearance standards evolve as well, especially when they serve no functional purpose?" The conversation continued for another 15 minutes, with Sarah providing additional examples and Davis maintaining her position that rules were rules, regardless of their perceived fairness. Finally, Davis told Sarah that she had until Monday morning to either provide proof of scheduled tattoo removal or face dismissal from the program. As Sarah left the office, she felt emotionally drained but not defeated. She spent the weekend researching her options and discovered that the State Fire Academy operated under the oversight of a civilian board that included fire chiefs, city officials, and community representatives. She learned that recruits had the right to appeal disciplinary actions to this board if they believed they had been treated unfairly. On Sunday evening, Sarah's story took an unexpected turn. Tommy had been discussing the situation with his father, who worked as a firefighter in Houston. Tommy's father had mentioned the case to several colleagues, and word had spread through informal networks of firefighters across the state. By Sunday night, Sarah began receiving phone calls and text messages from active firefighters who wanted to support her case. One of the most important calls came from Lieutenant Maria Santos, a 15-year veteran of the Dallas Fire Department who had faced similar discrimination early in her career due to a tattoo she had got to commemorate her service in the Army National Guard. Lieutenant Santos had successfully challenged her department's policy in 2019 and was now part of a statewide committee working to modernize fire service regulations. "Sarah," Lieutenant Santos said during their hour-long conversation, "what you're going through isn't just about you. There are hundreds of qualified people who never even apply to fire departments because they know about these outdated tattoo policies. Your case could be the catalyst for real change, but you need to be prepared for a fight." Lieutenant Santos offered to connect Sarah with other firefighters who had visible tattoos and exemplary service records, as well as with civil rights attorneys who specialized in employment discrimination cases. She explained that while the immediate battle was about Sarah's place in the academy, the larger issue was about ensuring that fire departments could recruit the most qualified candidates regardless of personal expression that didn't affect job performance. Monday morning arrived gray and rainy, matching the somber mood as Sarah prepared to meet with instructor Davis one final time. However, as she walked across the academy grounds, she noticed an unusual scene near the main administrative building. A small group of people stood in the parking lot, some wearing firefighter uniforms from various departments across the state. Tommy jogged up to her, his face excited and nervous. "Sarah, you're not going to believe this. Word about your situation spread through the firefighter network over the weekend. Lieutenant Santos from Dallas drove down here this morning, and she brought some other firefighters with her. They want to speak with the academy administration about the tattoo policy." Sarah felt a surge of emotion as she recognized that her individual stand had become something much larger. These experienced firefighters were putting their own reputations on the line to support a recruit they had never met, simply because they believed the cause was right. As Sarah approached the group, Lieutenant Santos stepped forward and shook her hand firmly. "We've got your back, kid. It's time for this policy to change, and sometimes it takes one brave person to start the process." The group included firefighters from 6 different departments, including 2 captains and a deputy chief. They had come prepared with documentation of their own department's updated policies, statistics showing improved recruitment after policy changes, and testimonials about the excellent performance of firefighters with visible tattoos. At 9 o'clock, this unexpected coalition requested a meeting with Academy Director Chief Robert, who had overseen the Academy for 12 years, but rarely dealt with individual disciplinary cases. Chief, faced with a group of respected firefighters from across the state, agreed to hear their concerns about the current tattoo policy. What happened next would challenge everything Sarah had expected about her appeal process and set the stage for a debate that would extend far beyond the walls of the State Fire Academy. The meeting with Academy Director Chief Robert took place in the main conference room, a spacious area typically used for graduation ceremonies and important academy events. Sarah found herself sitting at a long table across from Chief, with Lieutenant Santos and the other supporting firefighters arranged around the room. Instructor Davis sat at one end of the table, her expression clearly indicating her displeasure with how the situation had escalated beyond her control. Chief was a tall man with silver hair and intelligent eyes who had spent his entire career in the fire service. He had started as a young recruit in the 1980s and had witnessed tremendous changes in firefighting techniques, equipment, and personnel policies over his 4 decades of service. As he looked around the room at the assembled firefighters, Sarah could see him weighing the implications of what was happening. "Let me make sure I understand the situation," Chief began, his voice measured and thoughtful. "Recruit Martinez has been threatened with dismissal because of a tattoo that violates our current appearance standards. Several of you have come here to argue that these standards should be changed. Is that correct?" Lieutenant Santos spoke first, her voice clear and confident. "Chief, with respect, we're here because talented people are being excluded from the fire service for reasons that have nothing to do with their ability to do the job. Sarah Martinez has been one of the top performers in her academy class. Her tattoo commemorates her grandmother and represents the same values of courage and service that we all swore to uphold when we became firefighters. Captain James Wilson from the Austin Fire Department leaned forward, his numerous commendations and 20-year service record giving weight to his words. Chief, I've supervised dozens of firefighters over my career, including several with visible tattoos. I can tell you without hesitation that a person's ink has zero correlation with their performance, their dedication, or their ability to work as part of a team. What matters is their heart, their training, and their commitment to the job. Deputy Chief Foster from San added her perspective as someone who had been involved in policy development at her own department. We updated our tattoo policy 3 years ago, and it's been one of the best recruitment decisions we've made. We've attracted qualified candidates from military backgrounds, artistic communities, and diverse cultural groups that we were previously excluding. Our department is stronger and more effective as a result. Chief listened carefully to each speaker, asking detailed questions about their experiences and the practical implications of policy changes. Sarah was struck by his genuine interest in understanding different perspectives, even though she knew he was under pressure to maintain traditional standards that had guided the academy for many years. When it was Sarah's turn to speak, she stood and addressed Chief directly. Sir, I understand that traditions are important in the fire service. I grew up respecting those traditions because of my father's career. But I also believe that our traditions should be about courage, service, and protecting others, not about excluding good people for superficial reasons. My tattoo tells the story of my family's strength and my commitment to helping others rise from difficult circumstances. Those are the values that should matter in this room. Instructor Davis finally spoke up, her voice tense with frustration. Chief, if we start making exceptions to our appearance standards, where does it end? What's to stop recruits from showing up with facial tattoos, inappropriate imagery, or any other form of expression they claim is meaningful? Standards exist for a reason, and once we compromise them, we open the door to chaos. The room fell silent as Chief considered this argument. Sarah felt her heart racing as she realized that her entire future might hang on how he balanced tradition against progress, individual expression against institutional standards. After several long minutes, Chief spoke. Instructor Davis raises valid concerns about maintaining standards. However, the firefighters in this room have presented compelling evidence that these particular standards may no longer serve their intended purpose. He paused, looking directly at Sarah. Recruit Martinez, you've shown exceptional performance in all aspects of your training. Your character references are outstanding, and your dedication to the fire service is evident. At the same time, you've chosen to challenge a long-standing policy rather than comply with it. Sarah felt her stomach drop, expecting to hear that she was being dismissed from the program. Instead, Chief continued with words that surprised everyone in the room. I'm going to propose a temporary solution while we conduct a formal review of Academy Regulation 4.7. Recruit Martinez, you will be allowed to continue in the Academy program while wearing appropriate coverage for your tattoo during all official activities. In return, you will serve as a test case for a comprehensive policy review that will examine appearance standards across all aspects of the fire service. Lieutenant Santos smiled, but Chief held up his hand before anyone could respond. This review will involve input from active firefighters, academy staff, fire chiefs from departments across the state, and community representatives. The final decision will be based on evidence, not emotion, and it will establish standards that serve the best interests of both recruits and the communities we protect. Instructor Davis looked as if she wanted to object, but Chief's tone made it clear that the decision was final. Instructor Davis, you'll work with Recruit Martinez to establish appropriate coverage requirements that allow her to continue training while we complete this review process. I expect both of you to approach this situation professionally and with respect for the larger issues involved. Over the following weeks, Sarah's case became a catalyst for broader discussions about modernization in the fire service. News of the policy review spread through firefighter networks and eventually attracted attention from local media outlets. Sarah found herself reluctantly thrust into a spotlight she had never sought, giving interviews and answering questions about her motivations and goals. The Academy established a committee to review not just tattoo policies, but all appearance standards, examining whether current regulations served legitimate safety or professional purposes, or simply reflected outdated social attitudes. The committee included representatives from diverse fire departments, legal experts, and community members who could provide perspective on public expectations for firefighter appearance. During this process, Sarah continued her academy training with renewed determination. She wore long sleeves and high collars as required, but she also participated in committee meetings and provided input on proposed policy changes. Her fellow recruits, initially surprised by the controversy, gradually became supportive as they realized the broader implications of the policy review. Tommy organized study groups that included discussions about diversity and inclusion in the fire service. Lisa wrote a thoughtful essay for the Academy newsletter about the importance of judging people by their actions rather than their appearance. Even recruits who initially disagreed with Sarah's position began to acknowledge that the current policy might be excluding qualified candidates. The most significant moment came during a visit from retired Fire Chief Moore, a legendary figure who had broken numerous barriers for women in the fire service during her 30-year career. Chief Moore spoke to the Academy about the evolution of firefighter culture and the importance of focusing on what truly mattered in emergency situations. "I've been in burning buildings with firefighters who had tattoos, firefighters who didn't speak English as their first language, firefighters who came from completely different backgrounds than mine," Chief Moore told the assembled recruits. "In those moments, when lives are on the line, the only things that matter are training, courage, and the willingness to risk everything for strangers. Everything else is just decoration." As the committee's final recommendations approached, Sarah realized that her personal fight had become something much larger than she had ever imagined. The policy review was attracting attention from fire departments in other states, civil rights organizations, and military veteran groups who saw broader implications for employment discrimination based on body art. The question now wasn't just whether Sarah would be allowed to graduate from the academy with her tattoo uncovered. The question was whether the fire service as a whole was ready to embrace changes that would make it more inclusive and effective in serving increasingly diverse communities. The committee's final report was released on a crisp February morning, 6 weeks before Sarah's scheduled graduation from the Fire Academy. The 50-page document represented months of research, interviews, and analysis of policies from fire departments across the nation. Sarah sat in the academy library, her hands trembling slightly as she opened the report that would determine not only her future, but potentially the future of countless other aspiring firefighters. The executive summary began with a clear statement that would resonate throughout the fire service for years to come. After comprehensive review of current appearance standards and extensive consultation with fire service professionals, community representatives, and legal experts, this committee recommends the adoption of updated policies that focus on professional competence rather than personal expression that does not impact job performance or public safety. The report detailed findings that supported many of the arguments Sarah and her supporters had made. Fire departments that had updated their tattoo policies reported improved recruitment numbers, with no negative impact on public perception or operational effectiveness. The committee had surveyed community members and found that the vast majority cared more about firefighter response time and competence than about visible body art. Most significantly, the report included testimonials from military veterans who had been excluded from fire service careers because of tattoos received during their military service. The committee concluded that such exclusions represented a waste of valuable training and experience that could benefit fire departments and the communities they served. The new policy recommendations were comprehensive but reasonable. Tattoos would be permitted as long as they were not offensive, discriminatory, or unprofessional in nature. Facial tattoos above the collar line would still be prohibited, but arm, shoulder, and leg tattoos would be allowed. The policy included specific language about what constituted inappropriate content and established a review process for borderline cases. Chief called Sarah to his office on the day the report was released. This time, the meeting was private, with just the two of them discussing the implications of the committee's recommendations. "Recruit Martinez," Chief said. "The Academy Board has voted to accept the committee's recommendations and implement the new appearance policy effective immediately. This means you'll be able to complete your academy training and graduate with your tattoo uncovered, assuming you continue to meet all other requirements." Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes, but she maintained her composure as she thanked Chief for his leadership during the review process. He continued, "I want you to understand that your decision to challenge this policy took considerable courage. Change isn't easy in our profession, but sometimes it's necessary to ensure we're serving our communities effectively. The news of the policy change spread rapidly through the fire service community. Lieutenant Santos called Sarah that evening to congratulate her and share that several other state fire academies were already reviewing their own policies based on the committee's report. Captain Martinez, Sarah's father, struggled to contain his pride when he called to tell her how proud he was of her strength and principles. However, the policy change wasn't universally celebrated. Some veteran firefighters expressed concerns about changing long-standing traditions, and a few academy instructors, including Instructor Davis, remained skeptical about the wisdom of the new standards. Sarah recognized that cultural change would take time and that she would need to prove herself even more thoroughly to overcome any lingering doubts. In the final months of academy training, Sarah threw herself into her studies with renewed determination. She finished in the top 3 of her class in both academic and physical performance, earning recognition for her leadership during complex rescue simulations and her ability to remain calm under pressure. Her Phoenix tattoo became a source of pride rather than shame, with fellow recruits often asking about its meaning and appreciating the artistry of the design. The graduation ceremony took place on a beautiful spring morning in May. Sarah's family filled an entire row of the auditorium, with her parents, grandparents, and extended family members cheering as she walked across the stage to receive her certificate. Lieutenant Santos and several of the firefighters who had supported her case were also in attendance, representing the broader fire service community that had embraced change. During the ceremony, Chief delivered a speech about the evolution of the fire service and the importance of maintaining core values while adapting to changing times. He specifically mentioned the recent policy review as an example of the fire service's commitment to continuous improvement and inclusive excellence. When Sarah's name was called, she walked across the stage with confidence, her Phoenix tattoo visible for the first time at an official academy event. The applause was thunderous, not just from her family but from her fellow graduates and the fire service professionals in attendance. In that moment, Sarah realized that her individual fight had become part of a larger story about progress and inclusion. After graduation, Sarah was hired by the Metro City Fire Department, where she began her career as a probationary firefighter. Her reputation had preceded her, and while some veteran firefighters were initially skeptical, she quickly earned respect through her competence, work ethic, and team-first attitude. Her tattoo became a conversation starter rather than a barrier, with community members often commenting positively on the meaningful artwork. Within her first year on the job, Sarah responded to hundreds of emergency calls, including several major structure fires where her training and courage saved lives. She discovered that in the heat of emergency situations, no one cared about her tattoo or any other aspect of her appearance. What mattered was her ability to climb ladders quickly, operate equipment effectively, and make split-second decisions that could mean the difference between life and death. The policy change that began with Sarah's case continued to have ripple effects throughout the fire service. Within 2 years, 15 other states had updated their fire academy appearance standards, and dozens of individual departments had adopted more inclusive policies. Military veterans reported increased interest in fire service careers, and recruitment numbers improved in communities that had previously been underrepresented in the profession. Sarah's story was featured in Fire Chief magazine and became a case study in public administration programs across the country. However, she remained focused on her primary goal of serving her community rather than being a symbol or spokesperson. She volunteered her time to speak with young people interested in fire service careers, always emphasizing that success depended on preparation, character, and dedication rather than appearance. 5 years later, Sarah was promoted to the rank of lieutenant and began training new firefighters herself. When asked about her experience challenging the tattoo policy, she always emphasized that her goal had never been to change rules for the sake of change, but to ensure that the fire service could recruit and retain the most qualified candidates regardless of their personal expression. Her Phoenix tattoo, now faded slightly by years of sun exposure and physical work, remained a source of personal strength and a reminder of her grandmother's courage. More importantly, it had become a symbol of the fire service's ability to adapt and grow while maintaining its core commitment to protecting and serving communities. Sarah often thought about other young people who might now consider fire service careers without worrying about hiding meaningful tattoos or other forms of personal expression. She realized that her individual stand had contributed to a larger transformation that made the fire service more inclusive, more diverse, and ultimately more effective in serving the communities that depended on their courage and dedication. The little girl who had polished fire trucks in her father's station had grown up to become not just a firefighter, but a catalyst for positive change that would benefit the profession for generations to come. In fighting for the right to honor her grandmother's memory, Sarah had helped create opportunities for countless others to serve their communities while remaining true to themselves.